In our previous phone conversation, my Jehovah's Witness friend had read me a number of different texts right from the Watchtower literature in order to prove, at least in her mind, that the doctrine of the Trinity was invented in the 4th century at the Council of Nicaea. When I pointed out several different early church fathers from far earlier than that, who clearly believed and wrote about the triune nature of God, she then switched her argument to suggest that yes, that's all part of how the early church was already going apostate. I know that they like this argument, though it clearly contradicts the one she had initially been making. It's yet another attempted deflection away from the original claim that there was supposedly no such thing as the doctrine until Nicaea in 325. She follows this course of switching out argumentation several times in different conversations, and at the time I didn't fully realize how she was deflecting. So even though we don't get too deeply into that here, I wanted to just point it out because you'll likely hear it happen again in future videos. Towards the end of the last video, she attempted to claim that the Apostle John never wrote about the Trinity. I told her we disagree on that, and she wanted to go there because I'm sure she wanted to get into John 1:1 and their memorized training about why the Watchtower says a God instead of God. But before we got into that, I wanted to first examine her earlier claim about Psalm 82 calling men gods. So that's where we pick up in this part of the conversation.
Let's go back to where we were. We were going to look up where you're saying that that there are people referred to as gods in the Old Testament. Let's go there. Let's start there, because I think we can get to those scriptures from there. So
in the first instant in the Hebrew scriptures,
mm-hmm.
the first instant was when under the law covenant, but where God gave them a commandment that they should worship God alone and that there should be no other statue or idol or anything,
mm-hmm.
because he is a jealous God.
Right, yes.
And he doesn't give his glory to anybody. And that, of course, then
except he gives his glory.
Reinstated by Christ Jesus when he was on the earth.
Right, except that he does give his glory to Jesus too, because Jesus says, "Glorify me as you glorify yourself."
He didn't give his glory to anybody.
But then, why does Jesus ask the Father to give him the glory that he has?
That would be a lesser glory, not as.
How so?
There's degrees. There could be degrees of glory.
But if it's the glory of God,
then that is due Jehovah is like no other glory that is given to anybody else.
And yet that's what Jesus asked for, though. Do you think he was wrong?
Asked for glory, but
as he's I'm just looking at
doesn't make him equal with God.
I'm just looking up that exact reference.
I can ask glory from you, which is just a recognition.
Except I'm not God.
But,
so that would be quite different.
That wouldn't be the glory that I would expect that I would give to God, the glory that I would give to you or to anybody else.
Hang on a sec here. Yeah, okay, but that's looking at human terms.
Well, the Bible is written in human terms.
So I just had to find that while you were talking there. Okay, so that's John 17:5, right? So, what does your translation say?
John 17:5. I'll just bring that up. So my rendition says, "So now, Father, glorify me at your side with the glory that I had alongside you before the world was."
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's literally that I had with you before the world
alongside
was.
Or with you, same difference.
Yeah, so, okay.
So then, but the glory that Jehovah has is a separate glory, because don't forget that Jesus also then is the image of, because he's
the exact image
from the Father.
Yeah, he's the exact
image. That means that he would reflect certainly the qualities and the glory that his Father had. But if we're giving glory to Jehovah, we're not giving the same glory to Jesus, because Jehovah is the one to be worshipped. And what helps us realize that is if you look in Ephesians, it's not Ephesians, it's Philippians.
Okay.
And this is where some translations get it mixed up.
Okay,
Because this is Paul writing about being humble and knowing our position. Like the whole chapter. And
which chapter?
It says, verse 3 part, do nothing out of contentiousness or out of egoism, but with humility considers others superior to you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That chapter is referring to not to get puffed up for pride.
Right, sure.
Okay, then verse 5, it says, keep this mental attitude in you that was also in Christ Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Who existed in the form of God.
Paul is using Jesus as an example of humility.
Right, but what makes him humble? Because he doesn't claim to be. If he's being humble, how is he the example for human beings? If we're comparing Christ to God there.
No, we can't compare to Christ to God because
well, that's what it further. Doesn't it say he existed in the form of God and did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped? Right? So then he's saying Christ actually humbled himself compared to the Father, and therefore we should humble ourselves compared to one another, right?
Yeah, so you're agreeing that Jesus humbled himself?
Yes, of course he did. How humbling is it for the deity to step down into human history as a frail human body? I mean, that's how, incredibly humble. That's beyond what we can even imagine.
He humbled himself and he humbled himself by taking that position.
Right.
But that position that he took he was the same individual, because Paul referred to when he spoke to the Pharisees, he said that after Jesus was executed, he says Jesus was the same yesterday, today, and forever.
Right.
So while Jesus was on the earth, he was the same individual.
He's the same essence. Yeah.
That he was in heaven, except he was in a human form.
Right. He took on a human body. Yeah.
But in heaven he was a spirit form, but he was the same. So he humbled himself in taking a body, but he was a spirit person.
Right, but this says
he was still that person.
I should have caught this one because she's not really accurately representing Watchtower teaching. They believe that Michael the Archangel ceased to exist and was recreated into a man, Jesus, and when Jesus died, was then recreated back into Michael the Archangel from Jehovah's memory. That doesn't sound much like the same yesterday, today, and forever, does it? Russell even said that the man Jesus is dead, forever dead. If Jesus was an angel, then ceased to be, and was recreated as a man who died, and then was recreated as an angel, doesn't that sound like he went through some pretty big, total, and complete changes? I should have asked her this, but missed the opportunity. The historic Orthodox Christian understanding is that Jesus truly is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He took on flesh, but never ceased to be the very same Jesus, fully deity.
Okay, what does your verse 6 say there?
Pardon?
What does your verse 6 say in your translation?
Yes. Who, although he was existing in God's form.
Right, okay. So that is...
So what's God's form?
The form of God. He is God.
What is God's form? What would be another word for God's form?
What other word would there be? There's only one.
Well, remember in the Psalms, I think it's in 92, it speaks about the angels as being godlike.
I think she's probably thinking of Psalm 8, verse 5, in which the plural word Elohim is used in the Hebrew, while the word for angels is used in the Greek Septuagint of the Old Testament. So, depending on which is used, the word could be translated in English as either God or angels. That's why we see some variation in different translations depending on which manuscripts they are using. It's clear from the reference to this verse in Hebrews 2:7, it is referring to angels. That's not in dispute here. But to try and make that say that it's talking about the ontological nature of angels is a huge leap. And yet, the Watchtower does this time and again, keeping its followers confused and dependent on these nonsensical arguments instead of allowing them to research it for themselves. You'll hear more of this next as she calls Satan a god, etc. Note how, when I ask her if Satan is not a true god, she won't give me a yes or no answer at that point, and instead says, he's not Jehovah. I'm guessing that may be because, with the way the Watchtower demotes Jesus to a god, you can also say that since there is only one true God, Jesus would also have to be a false god. She may have been concerned that I was going to make that argument, so was trying to make that as difficult as possible.
So hang on. So are the angels the same as God too then?
They're godlike.
How?
They're the same because they're spirit creatures, but they're not almighty.
So then you would say there's more than one being of God. There's different kinds of beings of God.
No, there's different gods because there's gods. Paul wrote of gods of Elohim, which are gluttony.
But those would be false gods, right?
And John writes in 1 John 1:15, John writes as the God of this world is
right,
the devil.
Who is a false god, right? We would say that the devil, but the devil is a false god, so he's not true God. So he's not true God, though.
He's not Jehovah.
So how many true gods are there?
One.
Okay.
Because a true God is one, isn't it?
Right.
Otherwise, there wouldn't be the adverb true.
Right. So if there's one true God, and we agree on that, then if there are other gods that are the same substance, but they're gods, but they're not the true God, then what are they?
They're spirit creatures.
But they're not true gods.
No.
So they're not really the same essence as God then.
They're the essence, yeah. They're spirit. And essence is a material.
See, now you seem to keep coming back. It sounds like you believe there are many beings of gods. No. They're just different kinds of gods.
Different kinds. Yes, there are all kinds of gods. There's even physical gods. We idolize movie stars. We idolize hockey stars.
Sure, but those gods. Yeah, absolutely, and those are false gods, right?
Whether they're true to the people who are worshiping them.
Would that make them true gods then?
To them, it is, I guess.
Okay, this is playing the game of relativism or postmodernism yet again to try and blur the lines, suggesting that we can each have our own personal truth. Yet I know that she doesn't actually believe that. She has been clear that she believes in objective truth, not subjective truth. So I'd have to say that she's just playing games at this point.
But that would be relative, and we don't believe in relative truth, right?
Well,
I know you and I don't.
Truth is up to the end. One person's idea of truth is different, so that's why I use the Bible as a touchstone.
Right, but that's a really interesting comment. And there's some other places I wanted to go here, but I want to touch on that for a second because that's actually different than what you've said before. So I want to go there.
One thing that was different before.
Well, one thing that you have said a few times that I really appreciated was that, like, we live in a culture that believes that my truth is my truth and your truth is your truth, and we can't really ever know what the truth is because we all have our own truth. And it sounds like you and I both agree that that's absolutely false. There is truth and there is false.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay. It's the same as a true God.
Yeah. Okay. So there's true God and there's false gods.
Identify which God is the true God.
Right. So there's true gods, and then there's one true God, and then there's false gods.
Right.
Okay.
And
we have
so
spirits.
Fault with anything that either true and or Trinity is where Jesus and the Mosaic Law both said that there is only one
God,
Jehovah
yes,
that you should worship.
Right. So there's one true God. So any other God or anything else claiming to be a God or anything else we try to make a God, right, to be worshipped would be a false God.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's why we have high respect for Jesus.
Again, she just tried to suggest that the Trinity means more than one God. That's why she keeps repeating that there's only one God. And I keep agreeing with her, but she's still not hearing me. At that point, I think she was pretty much on autopilot because it was so important to her that she disprove the Trinity, even though she has shown countless times now that she doesn't even know what the doctrine of the Trinity is. In the next video, we'll pick up at this point and get into the book of Philippians a little bit.